These were 4. Now I know what that's for. There it is right there. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to University Unitarian Church in Seattle. It's September the 5th, Labor Day weekend, and the beginning of a new church season. Next Sunday is Homecoming Sunday. That's what we call it here, and we will return to 2 services, 9:30 and 11:15. And all week we've been getting questions from folks saying, are you sure you really want to do that? And are there going to be enough people, and so on and so forth? And we think the good reason to do it is in order to be truly an inclusive and multi-generational community, we need to make at least space in the beginning for the children and the youth. And so what we're going to do in the 9:30 service each week is it will be for vaccinated folks only, and in the second hour, the children's programming will take place. And so age 12 and under still in Washington, they are unvaccinated. Some of the teens are getting vaccinated, and there'll be certain guidelines and instructions for the family as they enter the building so their kids can get into the right places. With the pandemic, as most of you know, we kind of live week by week and month by month, and the name of the game really is flexibility. So if it turns out after a month or two that things are looking different, we will maintain the 9:30 service, which is live streamed. So for those who wish to remain home and safe, we will continue to live stream the services every week. We ask that everyone remain masked when they are in the building. There will be coffee and refreshments after the service, both at the upper level here on 35th Avenue and on the parking lot level below, where you have an opportunity to visit with some of your members and some new folks as well. I will greet folks here on the porch, if we call it that, after the service. And those of you who know me know that I'm a hugger, but I'm going to ask that we do it this way with a mask on for the time being, just to maintain our safety with each other. It's really good to be back and to see you and to be together with you. It's been a good and interesting summer, and we're ready to enter our 108th season next weekend. And more power to us, my friends. I believe these are the announcements that I have for us this morning. So let us begin the service this morning with our prelude. Of this morning with heart and mind and spirit, and may our hearts be opened with sensitivity to the joys and sorrows, the hopes and burdens of those who sit beside us or of those who reside in the sanctuary of our hearts. May our minds be enlarged to understand the many languages we speak as we struggle to give voice to the wisdom that resides within. And may our spirits be attuned to the deepest chords of reality as we seek to center ourselves in communion with the mystery of being. As we open ourselves to this hour of worship, may our souls find peace, and may the blessings of love be present with us in our togetherness. I invite you to sing quietly to yourself the doxology, with the mask remaining, of course. The words here are on the screen. I invite you now to join me in a spirit of prayer and meditation as we take a moment to quiet and center ourselves, seeking that which renews us as persons and as a people. We seek peace, for we have made peace with what does not give peace, and so we are often afraid. May we move deep enough now to face ourselves, so we may see that what we truly need to fear is our capacity to deceive and willingness to be deceived, our loving of things and our using of people. That what we truly need to fear is our struggle for power and our shrinking of spirit, our addiction to comfort and sedation of conscience. What we truly need to fear is our readiness to criticize and reluctance to create, our clamor for privilege and our silence at injustice, our seeking security and forsaking the common good. We seek peace. May we hold as much fear as will begin to make us wise, and find such quiet courage as will enable us to begin to make hope visible, forgiving, delightful, loving, contagious, faith liberating, and peacemaking joyful, and ourselves open and present to other people and to the great privilege of being alive. To these imperfect words, we add the silent intentions of our hearts and our minds.
I'm Nancy Moranville.
And I'm Ben Pfeiffer.
I never imagined UUC was going to become such a centerpiece in our lives. I've danced with you, meditated with you, sung together, planned events, protested, and showed up to vigil with you, learned, cried, laughed, and listened. Like family, sometimes there are challenges, but we are in covenant and have the opportunity to practice listening deeply. The church is a community akin to family. When our youngest adult child in their early 20s had a tumultuous struggle with gender and political identity, we found the Interweave group as a source of support and love. We have so much to be grateful for at UUC, for all we receive, an abundance of opportunities for spiritual learning and growth and commitment to social justice and earth justice. We both give and receive.
UUC has been an important part of our lives for more than a decade. We value the many ways this church community connects and engages us. I marvel at the many programs that UUC offers: worship, music, religious education, social justice, pastoral care. Sunday music can bring me to tears. Our ministers welcome people with very diverse beliefs and regularly challenge all of us with new insights and new ways of thinking. Joining with others in climate, racial, and economic justice efforts sustains hope for a better future. We want to keep strengthening our UUC community by stepping up our support a little more each year. We invite you to join in saying the words we say each Sunday.
This church is a community of ourselves. Its energy and resources are our energy and resources. Its wealth is what we share. When we contribute to the life of this community, we affirm our lives within it.
It's a little ironic, I think, that I'm going to invite you not to sing the next hymn, because the title of the hymn is How Can I Keep From Singing? Well, my life flows on an endless song, and yet we're not going to sing. But we are imaginative, so if you'd like to stand, please stand. If you'd like to remain seated, remain seated. We'll stay masked. Sing to yourself quietly, whisper, see the words on the screen, and enjoy our soloist. This is probably one of the hardest parts of coming back together, isn't it? Is not being able to sing. I've had one or two people tell me, well, I'm not coming back until we can sing, so I'm going to stay home and watch it on live stream and sing as loud as I can and bother the neighbor next door. But there you go. It's okay. And of course, with the local health guidelines as well as the suggestions, strong suggestions of our national headquarters in Boston, no congregational singing and no choirs until further notice. So our loft choir and our intergenerational choir are on hold, but the bell choir, not singing, will be back next week. Okay, hymn number 108, My Life Flows On, an Endless Song. living vicariously through you. Thank you so much. How are you doing, friends? How are you doing in your day-to-day coping from one thing to the next? It seems as if the news is relentlessly bad, isn't it? And day after day, there is a new assault on our sanity and maybe even our hopefulness, and we wonder how it is we're going to make it forward. Certainly, our great Mother, the Earth, is suffering tremendously under our ill care of her, and so she is visiting upon us natural calamities and disasters and putting many human beings in very great harm and straitened circumstances. We've just ended a war that maybe should have never been started, and we witness the humanitarian disaster that is happening and that will continue to happen in Afghanistan. We hear the rumblings of an old autocrat who wants to get back into the race to be the President of the United States again. And it's one thing after the other. And it's easy for us to be hopeless and maybe even in despair because there doesn't seem to be any good news, and yet there has to be good news somewhere. Yesterday I officiated a wedding at one of the base camps of Mount Rainier. It took me about 10 days to drive down there, but I finally got there. And the wedding was in the woods in what I would call an old hippie retreat center. And you're going to ask me about this, I know, when we leave the line here, because it's maybe your favorite place, and I won't tell you what it is. But anyway, we were sitting in the woods, and there was a natural amphitheater where the ceremony took place, and the sun came out at the right time, and we were surrounded by a pageant of extreme beauty to the point where it really took my breath away. And I marveled at the fact that we are alive still, and in the midst of such powerful beauty and spiritual depth as well, maybe as a kind of counterforce to all the bad news that comes our way. I think the best way for us to meet the news that comes to us, and it's important to remember that human beings in the last 50 years and more in the last 10 years have known more about what is happening everywhere in the world than we ever have at any time earlier. And all of the catastrophes and blunders of war have been happening for maybe thousands of years or hundreds of years, and we just didn't know it. We were living in our little bubbles, our little ethnic enclaves or class groups, and we just didn't know it. So it wasn't as overwhelming as today. But the way in which we can respond to this, and I'm really inspired by Deborah Rabel's sermon last week when she was talking about spirit and becoming inspirited. You see, the quality of our spiritual life, and I'll call it that, is measured by its capacity to grow. Quality is not measured by a stage of development or some combination of contents as skills and knowledge are. Therefore, we have to find some ways to assess our growth and to ascertain whether or not we are growing, and as a result, have the capacity to meet what comes. My very religious maternal grandmother always would pray each day for, Lord, may I have the capacity to meet what comes today. I know not what it'll be, but may I be ready enough to do it. And so we grow in our spirits by the quality of our participation, our involvement, our connection in life. We know this on a deep level. And the nature and the type of participation determines the nature of our spirit and its depth. You might wonder, can spiritual growth be measured? Really? Oh, sure, of course it can. all qualities can be measured. Maybe not precisely, but usually that doesn't matter as much as you might think. Here in Seattle, Boeing is very much aware that when they build a jet engine, there are parts that must conform to perhaps 1/10,000th of an inch of tolerance. But when we measure the Earth's distance to the sun, 100 miles here or there really doesn't make a lot of difference. And when we measure spiritual growth, we can get along without any numbers at all. Sorry, mathematicians, engineers. Obviously, spirituality is not an exact thing. We're not even sure, in fact, of some aspects we're measuring. But if you can say, I can say, I think I'm doing better now. Not better than yesterday, but I'm certainly doing a lot better than I did as a child. That may be enough. Many years ago, a woman came to me as she was struggling with the decision that she had made to divorce a second time. And she felt that she was herself a failure at having had to divorce 2 husbands. And I asked her, I said, well, how long did it take you to figure out how that you should divorce your first husband? And she said, 11 years of abuse, 11 years. And how long has it taken you to figure out you should divorce the second husband? 6 months. That's progress, I said. And it's significant too, because you have been in touch with the fact that you don't want to live your life a certain way, and you're just not going to put up with it. So you're going to end something sooner that's not healthy for you. It is surprisingly and strangely difficult to observe growth, any kind of growth. Those of us who watch children grow up are amazed from time to time to see objective evidence of the growth that has taken place. This weekend is the 1-year birthday of our first grandchild. And I can tell you we're all over the moon about this, and there are parties and way too many presents being showered upon this little shaver. We've had a difficult year. Some of you know about how awful the last year was, but we made it through that. In that awful period, we were living with our daughter and her partner, and so we were taking care of little Wyatt every day and night. And we really couldn't see the development or change there. But now that we're back home some months and see him once a week, we can tell that there's more dexterity in the left and the right arms, and he's able to pull himself up, and he's better able to engage with us. So for as long as we go along with children, we do not always notice they're changing any more than we notice the aging of ourselves. I'm still 40, I think. If it's difficult to measure a mature physical thing, how much more difficult is it to measure spiritual growth? Yet we need to do this. And if the spirit or the soul capacity in us makes so much difference to the quality of lives, we cannot afford to be ignorant of whether it is standing still, going downhill, or enlarging itself and developing as it can. So this morning I'm going to offer a couple of ways in which you can think about yourself. These are not universally valid, no. And you will prefer some of these ways over others. And I trust you have some of your own ways, and you're going to tell me next week in your email, you didn't hit any bullseye as far as I could tell because you didn't consult me, and this is what I think it should be. So you must formulate your own measurement. But there's one common denominator in all of these ways, and it's this, that the quality of our participation in human relationships is absolutely paramount, and it is greatly difficult to do it today in these pandemic times. If you are properly involved, and I'll put it that way, your spirit will grow, whether you know or think about it or not. And if you use some of these suggestions to keep the conditions of your lives receptive to growth through participation, you will have encouraged the main thing. And one day in the future, you may suddenly realize that you have reached a new point spiritually and are in the process of going beyond that point to another one. So let me give you a few ways. In the form of questions, a spiritual person might ask themselves, have you changed your mind lately? This question applies to your most cherished and unshakable convictions, as well as to other beliefs and positions you hold. I'm not talking about whether or not you've changed what kind of ice cream you like. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about now here some of the things that you would consider to be the most definitive beliefs you carry. In a rapidly changing world, we have to run just to stand still. And if you are on the ground that's vibrating and jolting and falling, we had better be moving just to keep upright. And a bridge, as you know, has no stability unless it's flexible. And the higher and longer the bridge, the more difficult the circumstances, the greater is the necessity of flexibility. Not only with bridges, but tall buildings. Years ago now, when the UUA was thinking about having the General Assembly in Seattle, as they go around to the major cities in the area, we were invited by the UUA brass to come downtown into one of those tall skyscraper hotels to have lunch and talk about the joys of Seattle. As we gathered in the dining room on the top floor, I asked our hostess, I said, were you in this building during the earthquake some years ago? And she said, yes. We were not allowed to leave the building. The elevators were closed. And I said, what was the building doing? She said it was swaying. We would get almost to a foot close to the Nexus building, and then the building would come up. How were you doing all of that? I was totally terrified, she said. But the building stood because it was flexible. Stability is not a fixed and fast thing. It means moving with moving times. Therefore, a spiritual person keeps asking themselves questions such as these. Have I changed my mind about the quality of music I like best? What makes for good art? What is the nature of maturity? Am I a mature person? Do I believe in God? Many times, our dear UU atheist will say to me, I don't believe in God. I haven't believed in God since I was 15. I said, oh, that's too bad. Because God has changed, but you haven't. You're still in an old understanding of what God was when you were a teenager. But God is an evolving entity, and so many people today believe in it in different ways. Check it out. Maybe there's something in there to do. What about morality? Am I stuck on what first made sense to me so many years ago? Whatever it was, it's changed, even if you haven't. Have I changed my mind about which social problems are most pressing to us? Really difficult for us today with this whole notion of intersectionality, which is necessary and right, but it makes everything so much more complicated and difficult to approach. Which solutions are the most viable ones for political issues? Have I changed my mind about my feelings and their validity, so on? Okay, so that's one question. Have you changed your mind lately? Secondly, have you any new problems? Nobody can go on without living without new problems. How do you handle your physical incapacity today as compared to yesterday? Oh my gosh, when Annie and I, my wife and I, were taking care of our little grandson, we would look at each other at the end of every day and we'd say, there's a reason you have children in your 20s and not your 60s. Oh my gosh. What about your loss of memory? I think the older we get, and sometimes we catch ourselves being forgetful, we're absolutely panic-stricken because we think it's the end. What about the loss of your children who are growing up and moving on and living into their own lives and doing things that you probably, or at least your mother, would never sanction? Okay. What about the changes in Seattle as a result of the pandemic? A few of us were talking about this just before the service. The boarded up buildings, the homelessness, the street violence everywhere. Are you as comfortable today to go downtown and walk around as you were in an earlier time? A person who does not have new problems is someone who is not involved in the changing life all around them. New problems require new solutions, not tired tricks. And a problem is not a sign of defeat or trouble. It is a sign of being alive. Conflict is a sign that you are alive, even though we avoid it at almost all costs. But if your body wasn't in conflict with all of the things that would like to invade it and take you down, you would be dead. So we need it. New conflict, new problems. Third, have you any unfinished business? Society encourages us to solve and wrap it up and dispose of problems neatly, putting a string around the package. This is supposed to give us a sense of virtue for having completed our tasks. Whatever merit that attitude has in business, it does not go with spirituality, because the work of the Spirit is never done, for the Spirit never stops growing. I had a very dear friend, now of blessed memory, who got a cancer diagnosis. It was going to be very rapid. She was not going to have a lot of time left. She continued to see her therapist and her spiritual director. And a mutual friend of ours asked her once, "Why do you bother? You have only 2 months left to live, or 3 months left to live." "Because I am still alive, and I am still growing. And the best insight that I might ever have might come to me in the little time that I have left." If we grow in our thinking, feeling, understanding of life, we will die with more unfinished business than we ever had in our prime, because we know more, and we see more, and we feel more, and we are more aware of the intricacies of conditions than we ever were in our youth, when we were busy with so many other things. If we are involved in the process of life, the end of our particular span of years in the community does not mean an end of our life, because we all belong to life unfolding. That is a great privilege for a human being. It really is. Fourth, and I'm almost done. Have you had any failures or felt shame recently? We cannot live without suffering failure. For involvement means trying things that are not what ought to be, and reaching beyond our comfortable levels of achievement. To seek in this way is to experience not only defeat in the usual sense, but shame. And it implies asking questions like, have I found the blood rushing to my face in shame over what I thought I could be, but am not? Over a failure of understanding, or of having said or done something to hurt those most precious to me, something unthinkingly, but cruel. We can be cruelest with those we love best, because we know where the chinks in the armor are. And one or two words can bring them down. Have I stupidly failed to sense or see or hear as I could have? Have I felt appalled at how selfish and frightened I am? Such shame, devastating as it can be, is not an experience to avoid, but to accept and respect, because it is a very great teacher. It can make you more self-aware, at once both more humble and more proud. For against the backdrop of these failures, we can savor our successes more appreciatively. And learning that the world does not come to an end because we are humiliated enables us to risk commitment and connection again. Have you any new enthusiasms? One quality so sorely lacking in our drab living is the quality of joy. When was the last time you felt joy? Pure, unadulterated, endless joy. Have we become so rigid as to be paralyzed against happiness? The proper kind of involvement in a constantly shifting world will throw even new light on fresh aspects of old things. Conditions become new even though they have been there forever. When a person sees them for the first time, if we could but develop the eyes to see it well enough, the world would be new for each of us every day of our lives. I spend as much time as I can in the woods. But yesterday afternoon, sitting in that amphitheater, I felt like a newborn child in the majesty of that forest. And last, have you grown beyond your anger or resentment recently? This question doesn't imply that spiritual people should never get angry, nor does it mean that we should avoid conflict or disagreement at all costs. Rather, this question is an indicator of your emotional strength. A spiritual person finds themselves less angry at many things because they are more willing to discover that they may be wrong, even in their deepest dedication to a particular point of view. They are less concerned about their pride and their victory and their reputation. My gosh, I love these lines of the Persian poet Rumi. You've heard them before, I know you have. This being human, he said, is a guest house, and every morning a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice. Meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. What wonderful words. I know I've shared with you before here that I have on occasion throughout my whole life struggled with depression. And it wasn't really until I worked with a profoundly spiritual counselor who said to me, befriend your depression. It is one of your greatest teachers. It is not all of who you are, but it is a very important part of who you are. So when you feel it coming, and for me it is a chemical awareness that it's coming, I look over my shoulder and I say, there you are again. You are coming to be with me for a while. Be gentle if you can. So here they are, friends. Have you changed your mind recently? Have you any new problems? Any unfinished business? Any failures or shames? Any new enthusiasms? Have you grown beyond your anger and your resentment? Possibly the greatest potential value of a diverse church community like this one is that it can bring people who are so very different from each other together, with different interests, values, and viewpoints, and enable us all to live intimately with those with whom we disagree. I have often said for many years, and I don't even know where I got this one, but the definition of a liberal is a person who has a meaningful relationship with a conservative. Okay? Not someone who lives in their own tribe, but someone who has the capacity to remain firm in one's convictions, but open to the point of view of someone radically different. We can only do this if we enable people to trust themselves and each other in a relationship. And that is my fervent hope for this church. And I will dedicate myself to building it with you for as long as I am with you. Friends, spirituality is not an accomplishment, it's a process. And to come to terms with it is not to settle on any series of points, but to continue to grow and deepen in one's understanding. And an analogy from physics may be helpful here. The nature and the quality and the direction of change in any substance is far more important than any given state or condition at any particular time. In other words, it is not what you are, but what you are becoming that is important. Thus, we are never perfect. Lewis Thomas said, "The capacity to blunder slightly is the real marvel of DNA. Without this special attribute, we would still be anaerobic bacteria, and there would be no music." If perfection were possible, the implication would be that creativity had stopped and the world had ceased to change. And that cannot be in the world as we know it, and the world as we cherish it. So may it be. Amen. Our closing hymn this morning, another great one we, love to sing so much. 140, Hail the Glorious Golden City, written for the ethical culture movement by Felix Adler in New York City, number 140.
Glorious Holy City,
Be God, may God be with you. If you embrace life, may life return your affection. If you seek a way, may a path be found, and the courage and companionship to take it. Step by step, we have been given, and much is expected of us. Go in peace. See you next week.
you.